This is Algebra 2 review for the Semester 1 final. In this video, I'm going to look at the problems 13 through 20. And starting with number 13, it says, which of the following is equivalent to 8 over 2 minus 4i? Now with these problems, with all the I problems, when we have that I in the bottom, what we want to do is we want to get rid of it. We want a whole number on the bottom. So to do that, we're going to keep the 8 over 2 minus 4i. Now I'm going to multiply both top and bottom by the conjugate, which is 2 plus 4i. Whoa. So on the top, I'm going to have 8 times the quantity 2 plus 4i. On the bottom, when I multiply, it's like foiling, so I'm going to do 2 times all of this. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 4i is 8i. Then negative 4i times this, negative 8i. Negative 4i times 4i is negative 16i squared. Now when I distribute the top, I get 16 plus 32i. On the bottom, the 8i's cancel. And remember that I squared always equals negative 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cancel the I squared, but I'm going to change this to plus, because what I'm doing is I'm plugging negative 1 into that, and it's really just going to change that sign to 16. So now I got 4 plus 16 is 20 now. If you look at this compared to all our answers, look at all these answers. You got all these fractions, and the numbers are definitely smaller. So what I'm going to do now is I realize I have to reduce this fraction. 4 is the biggest one that goes into all of them. So I'm going to divide by 4 and get 4 plus 32i over 5. Now, usually we show it like this, but notice how they're separating all these fractions. They took this and made it into 2 fractions. 4 over, 32i over, and all they're doing is taking the common denominator, that 5 goes on both. 4/5 plus 32i over 5. And, oh, I forgot when I was reducing, whoops, that should have reduced to 8. So that's an 8i. So then 4/5 plus 8i over 5. C is my solution for number 13. 14, for my absolute value inequality, remember, whenever you have the absolute value, you're going to have 2 solutions. My first one comes from 2a plus 19 is less than 9. I'm not changing anything at all. Subtract the 19, I get 2a is less than negative 10. Divide, I get a is less than negative 5. So I've got that for choice A. I've got it for choice B. I got it for choice D. It's definitely not C. Now one thing is that a lot of people will think, oh, I'm done because I've got an answer. But remember, with absolute value, the inside can be negative, which means I have to also solve it for negative 9, but I have to flip that symbol to greater than. So now I'm going to subtract 19 again, but this time I get negative 28 on this side. I divide, I get negative 14. So now I've got a is greater than negative 14. So greater than 14, greater than negative 14, B is my solution. Excuse me. Number 15, we're asked to factor all this. Now in the beginning, I've got to notice in the very beginning, look at what's common to all 3 of these terms. You have a z in all of them. So I know my first step in factoring, I'm going to take a z out. But also notice I've got 12, 16, 128. A 4 can come out of all of those. So I'm going to take 4z out, really. This becomes now 3w squared plus 4w, I'm taking the z off. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Minus, 4 into that is 32, and I'm taking the z off. So now I'm left with that on the inside. So I'm looking at my 4 answers. I got 4z, I got 4z. It's definitely not B or C. So now it's a matter of factoring this. Now if you don't remember how to factor that, what you can do is I can look at 3w plus 8, w minus 4. I can multiply these out to see if it gives me this. If it doesn't, then I know it's probably going to be D, but I would multiply these out also just to check. Now I'm going to show the factoring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the diamond first. 3 times negative 32 is negative 96. On the bottom I have 4. So I've got 2 numbers that have to multiply to give me negative 96 and add to give me 4. Totally easy. 12 times negative 8 is negative 96. And then the 12 plus negative 8 is 4. So now with the diamond, I'm going to take, and I'm running out of room here, I'm going to go ahead and show this somewhere else. I'm going to take the 3w squared, and I'm going to put in that plus 12w instead of 4w, and then minus 8w instead of that, minus 32 on the end. And then I'm going to split this down the middle so I can factor by grouping. So in common first, I've got 3w that'll come out of this. It becomes w plus 4. And out of this, I can take a minus 8 out. W plus 4 again. So now my factored form, the common terms I took out were 3w and negative 8. And then w plus 4. 3w minus 8. W plus 4. There it is right there, part D at the end. I just want to make sure that's correct. 3 or minus 8, and then, okay. So then number 15, D is my solution for number 15. 16, we're asked to simplify this division problem. And before I do anything, I'm going to keep that first fraction, go back to old school math, and change it to multiplication, stay flip, flip. So this becomes 15, x to the 6th, y to the 4th, 25x, y to the 5th. So I've got a lot of simplifying to do here. Now, stay with me. It's going to take, it's going to be quite a few steps here. 5 and 25 will cancel. So I'm going to start by just looking at these coefficients. 5 into 25 goes 5 times, but then 5 into 15 goes 3 times, but then, and that's why I said stay with me, 3 goes into 6 twice. Now that's not the only way you could do it. What you could do is you could just multiply in the beginning. 5 times 15, you would get 75. On the bottom of 6 times 25, you get 150, and you would try to reduce that. And 75 over 150 does reduce to 1/2. And that's really what I got here. So when I multiply, I'm going to get the 1 on top. 1 is the only coefficient left on top. 2 times 1 on the bottom, 2. So I get the same thing, but it might be easier by being able to cancel all that the way I did. Now when I multiply the variables, x to the 3rd times x to the 6th on top, that gives me x to the 9th. So when I'm multiplying, I'm adding these exponents. Y squared times y to the 4th is y to the 6th. On the bottom, I have x times x, which is x squared. Y to the 3rd times y to the 5th is y to the 8th. And now, before I go my last simplifying step, I'm going to look at my answers. I've got a 2 on the bottom of my fraction, which means the 2 has to stay there. I've already simplified my coefficients, so I know I'm going to have a 2 in the denominator. B cannot be my answer, but if you look at the others, I've got a 2 there on the bottom, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the bottom. Now if you look at the x's and y's, when you look at the x's, 9 and 2, I've got a larger number on top of the fraction. What that tells me is that the x's will end up in the top of my answer in the final solution. And it doesn't eliminate anything because I've still got x, x, x. I've got all these x's there on top. Now to figure out what's going on top for the x, 9 minus 2 is 7. There's 7 more on top. So I know as my part of my solution, I've got x to the 7th on top, and I've got 2 on the bottom. X to the 7th and 2, so chances are it looks like A is going to be my answer. I will check the y's though, just to make sure. So with the y's, I've got 8 on the bottom, 6 on the top. That tells me that the y in the final answer will end up on the bottom. Now the exponent on the y will be 8 minus 6, which is 2. There's y squared on the bottom, so I've got x to the 7th over 2y squared. A is my solution on number 16. 17. To solve the equation x squared plus 12x equals 4 by completing the square, which equation would be part of the solution? If I'm completing the square, that means I've got plus 12x. That means I have to add something to both sides. To get that something, I have to take this middle term 12, I have to cut it in half and square it. 12 divided by 2 is 6, squared is 36. 4 plus 36 is 40, and right there, now I can see, well, I've got the 40s, so probably not going to be one of those. And when you're completing the square, the whole point of completing the square is that you can factor it nicely into this format. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 36 is 6. So that's the nice thing about completing the square. The sign in the middle goes right there. X plus 6 quantity squared equals 40, matches what I have here. I don't have to finish solving. I'm done when I get there. So 17, our solution is B. 18. We're asked to factor this. Now, the nice thing about the multiple choice test is that if I wanted to, I could take these and just instead of having to factor this, I could take these quantities and multiply them out and see if I get 9x to the fourth minus 49y squared. It might take a while, but I can do that. Now what I'm going to show here is I'm going to show the factoring. Now this is, it looks complicated because of the y's, but this is actually a difference of two squares. And I know that because first of all I've got a subtraction that tells me difference, and I can take the square root of each of these. The square root of 9x to the fourth is 3x squared. The square root of 49y squared is 7y. Since it's following that difference of two squares pattern, the only thing, these are going to be exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the signs. 3x squared, 7y, 7y. Difference is plus and minus. 3x squared plus, well, those are both the same sign. It's not going to be that one. 3x squared minus, both the same sign. 3x squared plus 7y, 3x squared minus 7y. D is my solution on number 18. Number 19, choose which of the following equations would produce the widest vertically compressed graph. Now what that means is normally your x squared when you're graphing is like this. But what they're asking is which of these graphs is going to take, or equations, is going to take this normal original parabola and make it like this. And to do that, what that means is that the rise is not as much as usual. And to get that, what you need is a number with the a value has to be between 0 and 1. To make it skinnier, it would have to be greater than 1. But again, we want this to happen. So in other words, it has to be some kind of fraction. So it's definitely not A. It's definitely not C. So the trick here, though, is when we look at these new coefficients, 1/2 and 1/3, it's got to be widest. So you got to think about which one is going to be wider than the other. Just look at the denominators. I've got a 2, I've got a 3. The larger denominator is going to get it to be the widest. It's treated a little bit like slope. It's like if we went right 2 over 1, or right 2 up 1, right 3 up 1. The right 3 up 1 will give you a wider graph. So our answer for number 19 is going to be the last one, D. 20. Which of the following most accurately describes the translation from the graph y equals x to the quantity x minus 4 squared minus 2 to the graph y equals the quantity x plus 9 squared plus 3. We've got all these directions happening, so we're shifting from this graph to this graph. The best, easiest way to do this is to look at the vertex of each graph. The vertex of this one is going to be positive 4, negative 2. Remember, I'm referring back to y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, where the point h and k is your vertex. So we have to take inside the parentheses, minus h became positive h, so the minus has to switch to positive. This vertex is going to be the opposite of plus 9, which is negative 9, and then positive 3. The k's don't change signs. Plus 3 stays as positive. So now with the x's, for the left and right, we're going from positive 4 all the way to negative 9, which means we're going, if we're thinking about your graph, positive 4 all the way over to negative 9. We're starting here and moving to the left a whole bunch of spaces. 4 here, 9 here, that's 13 spaces total. So we're going left 13. So it's left 13. That looks like the only one that says left 13. So it's probably going to be B. But just to check, negative 2 on the y's, negative 2 to 3. We're starting at negative 2, going to positive 3. And that's from here to here is going up 5 units. Up 5, left 13. Number 20, my answer is B.